Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mir Zahir Abbas. I am the Operations Manager of SciSec. Welcome to today's webinar. The regular ground rules, all attendees to the webinar will be on mute by default. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You can type your question on the chat window and it will be responded after the completion of the presentation. This webinar is a part of weekly series titled Samgacchadhwam. May we all progress together. The objective is to cover different topics of security over the course of this series. We want to provide a conceptual overview in these webinars to the various aspects of security and hope this will kindle your interest to explore further. This is the 41st webinar in this series and topic is the importance of security during cloud migration. We are also going to record this webinar and the recording will be uploaded on the SciSec YouTube channel. So you can always refer back to the video later if necessary. Please subscribe to SciSec YouTube channel. The assessment link will be activated at the end of the webinar in the registration page. Those who successfully complete the assessment will be provided a certificate tomorrow. The assessment will be kept open for 60 minutes after the completion of the webinar. Those who get 10 or more correct answer out of 15 will be provided the certificate of achievement and others will get certificate of participation. In this slide, you can see the assessment link will be activated on the registration page itself at 6:30 p.m. Let me now introduce the speaker for today's webinar. It is great to have Mr. Vaisak, who is the CEO and Chief Architect of Prophase Technologies. He is an electronics engineer graduate who developed a deep passion for software by exploring various platforms. One of them was an international hacking community called RuxCon, which is a computer security conference that brings together the best and the brightest security talent within the Australia Pacific region. Being a member of this community, he got to know the deeper aspect of ethical hacking. This was how his passion for cybersecurity grew more and more deeper. He has worked for various MNCs in the past only to discover his ability to be an individual player in the field. With the experience gained from various corporates and his own insight, he started Prophase, the new phase of security. Another speaker for today is Ms. Lakshmi, who is the COO and product evangelist at Prophase. She is a computer science engineering graduate. She started her career with Infosys working on the development of their banking product and has worked for many other different domains for various international projects. She has also worked on hospital management softwares with various other international clients. Having worked on multiple products and understanding of the importance of data security and other international compliances, she could add to the initial development of Prophase. She brings with her the corporate culture and leads the operations at Prophase. Now I'll hand over to Lakshmi to take you through the next part of the webinar. Over to you, Lakshmi. Hello, Lakshmi. Lakshmi, is my voice audible?
Yeah, so a very good evening to one and all present here. So I believe that the most of the audience belong to various engineering colleges of Karnataka and other states. So it's really a privilege for me. First of all, I would like to thank SciSec for calling us for conducting this webinar. So it's a privilege for Proface team to do this on a Karnataka-wide state, state organization. So I remember as from when we were taken for IB from college, so we had a IB visit to ISC. So it's a privilege actually, so that to talk on behalf of on a program co-hosted by ISC. So thanks a lot. Yes. My humble greetings to all of you, and I believe that I'm talking to a wonderful audience out here, and each of you have a lot of capabilities, and if tapped properly, I'm sure you guys are also going to talk in the same way, addressing a lot of people out there. So let's get started. So the topic for today is importance of security in cloud migration. So before that, I would like to actually keep it really simple so that you guys get a better idea. So that I would like to start from the basics. Let's start from what a cloud is. So I'll just share my screen so that you guys can see that. Yeah, hold on. Yes. So is my screen visible? Yeah.
Yes, the screen is
Hello?
visible.
It's visible, right?
You can do the slideshow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So getting on to the importance of security during cloud migration, I would like to start with an introduction to cloud computing. So I'm sure all of you, nobody is unaware of what cloud is. So let's just dig deep dive into what cloud exactly is. So, and I'm sure now nobody can imagine a world without cloud storage. So this is how it goes. Just a second. Yes. Sorry, that was the wrong slide. Yes. Okay. So basically, cloud refers to the softwares and services that run on the internet and instead of locally being on your computer. So earlier, we had all the monolithic servers wherein you could see that everything was stored on local servers and you had to maintain all the hardware. The organization had to bear all the expenses. But now it has been really simplified wherein all the services are actually placed on the internet and you can access it from anywhere, anytime. So what are the types of cloud deployments? So I'm sure all of you guys are aware of, you've heard of Amazon, AWS, GCP, and DigitalOcean, all that. So these actually belong to different categories called public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. So basically, based on the different business needs, we have different storage solutions that suits different business needs of your organization. So starting with public cloud, I would actually take some example of some of the public cloud providers, and that would be Amazon Web Service, IBM Cloud, Google Cloud, which is called GCP, and also Microsoft Azure. So, and the advantage of using these public cloud is that it's highly scalable and it's very cost effective, and you can it's highly reliable, and you don't have to actually bother about any of the monitoring part. Everything is taken care by the public cloud provider, and absolutely no maintenance is required from the organization part. So that is one major advantage of using a public cloud. Moving on to a private cloud. So you must be thinking, okay, why do we actually need all these different kinds of cloud deployments? So basically, that's, as I already told, it's basically based on different business needs. So if it's an organization that's got a very mission critical data, which actually requires additional security, so you cannot just go for any public cloud because public cloud is a shared responsibility model and it's exposed. So you those kind of enterprises, be it like fintech or hospitals, wherein the data is very critical, you actually go for private cloud. And private cloud infrastructure either can reside on premise or on a third party vendor. So similar to the public cloud, it has its own specific advantages. So that actually is like it's highly scalable and the efficiency is really high and you have better security. So compared to public cloud, private has better security because it's specific for an organization and it's not exposed. And it's also customizable. So if you have any particular ways in which you want the cloud to be customizable to your organization, you are actually free to do that. Okay, so now moving on to hybrid cloud. So what would you do if you want benefits of both the public cloud, but you would also want security that's there on the private cloud? For this kind of instances is that you go for a hybrid cloud. So wherein you have, it's a combination of both the public and the private cloud. So you have, the flexibility of the public cloud as well as the security is also ensured. So you have better control over the data. It's highly customizable and it's a cost-effective platform. Okay, moving on to different types of cloud offerings. So basically, you have a type of cloud computing solutions like IaaS, PS. It's like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, and anything as a service. So these are different types of service models that you have when you consider cloud. So coming on to infrastructure as a service, it's a type of cloud computing, so that delivers the on-demand data storage and network over the internet. So it's like you just have to pay on the go, and so you don't have to actually pay for the entire infrastructure. So only the one that you're utilizing, you have to pay for it. So this actually offloads of the organization of the responsibilities of maintaining their own hardware and the infrastructure themselves. Then we have something known as platform as a service. So wherein you have a third-party provider that delivers the hardware and software tools over the internet. So it hosts all the hardware and software on its own. So that's something called platform as a service. Another one is software as a service, wherein you are delivering your applications over the internet. So if you actually consider Prophase, so we actually provide our web application firewall in the form of software as a service. So that's the new terminology that has come into being when the cloud has actually come into picture. So instead of, the way it is advanced is like you don't have to install and maintain the software anywhere on a local server or anything. You can just put it on the internet, and so anybody can access it and use a service from anywhere, and that resolves all the problems of maintaining a hardware and proper specified storage. The final one would be anything as a service. So it's a delivery of anything in form of a service. So basically, it recognizes vast number of products, tools, and techniques that vendor can now deliver to users as a service, which is again done through the internet. So moving on to our core topic of today is it's basically security for cloud migration. So first of all, let's consider what cloud migration actually is. Yes. So basically, cloud migration is the process of shifting your applications and other business elements to a cloud computing environment. So we actually got to know what cloud is, what are different types of cloud deployments that you have. So, and considering all this, so if at all an organization wants to shift their on-premise data to a cloud, and that is actually for its various advantages, that is actually called cloud migration. So you can see that you're migrating your data from the on-premise to the cloud. That's like migrating the business central form. There are, and as you can see, we had different types of deployments. We also have different types of cloud migration. So let's look into what are these different forms. So first of all is the normal, the migration that comes into your mind is like you are moving your data from the data center to the public cloud. So that's as simple as it sounds. And also, like if you are not satisfied with a particular platform and you would want to switch to another cloud platform, so that is again called as cloud to cloud migration. So if you are working on an AWS and you want to shift to GCP or a DigitalOcean, so that is called cloud to cloud migration. And then you have at a point of time you would want to actually take back all the data that's actually on the cloud, and you would want to put it back to your data center, the local data center. So that is actually a reverse process. So that is why it is called as reverse cloud migration. So these are different types of migration and enterprise actually goes for. Okay, moving on to the cloud migration strategies. So actually, you cannot just simply shift all the application onto the cloud just like that. So a lot of planning and a lot of strategies have to be adopted before you are actually shifting all your data to the cloud. So and some of the factors that actually are involved in this process is identifying the application. So you have to identify what kind of application that you're actually wanting to shift to the cloud, and then you have to identify the goal for migration. So what is it that why is it that they want to actually shift the data to the cloud? So is it because of the cost factor or use the infrastructure or whatever? So cloud is basically a shared model. So whatever is the reason, that has to be identified, predefined and kept. Then you have to identify the data that has to be actually moved. So you wouldn't want to move all the organizational data onto the cloud. So you would only want to move the relevant ones. So that has to be identified before starting with the cloud migration. And then you have to identify how quickly the data has to be moved onto the cloud. So whether the stipulated time through which the cloud migration process actually have to happen, that has to be identified. And you have to finally identify how the migration has to happen. So these are the cloud migration strategies that you will actually have to keep in your mind before you start migrating. Yeah. So when you do the cloud migration processes, there are few strategies or few factors on which it is actually based. So you might have to actually evaluate the performance and the security requirements, and you have to do the selection of a cloud provider, because we have a lot of providers out available. So like AWS, GCP, DigitalOcean, and all this. So first of all, you have to identify which provider you are actually going to stick to. And then you have to calculate all the costs that is involved in the process. And if at all any organization are required, that also has to be sorted out. So these are the things that you actually have to sort out while you're migrating. Now let's move on to the benefits of cloud. So why is it that we are taking all the trouble and actually shifting your data from your local servers to the cloud providers? Actually, why are you doing this? So this has to be actually understood really well before you start migrating. It's not that everybody is shifting onto the cloud, so our organization also has to shift onto cloud. So that's not the strategy. If you have real solid reasons and you have the specific idea on why you're actually shifting, so that has to be laid out first before you actually start the migration process. So few of the migration benefits, that is like you have faster deployment time. So deploying anything you want to deploy in the cloud, it's very easy. And then you have enhanced security features, because the cloud providers provide basic security measures. So that's already in place for us. So that can be used. And the IT capital and the operational costs are saved, because you just have to pay on the go. So you don't have to afford all the hardware like you did in the old local servers thing. So you only pay for the utility that you're using. And it's always easier to obtain the authority to operate. So if you have your developers, testers, everybody in different parts of the world, so they don't have to actually request for the resources. They just can operate on the go. And so that in turn actually improves the IT performance as well. And other added features are scalability and the cost. The cost is kept at optimum, and you can scale up to support any amount of workloads that comes in. And the performance is way better than when you compare with the earlier monolithic model, and the digital experience is really nice. So these are the factors, or the glittering factors, due to which all organizations are actually shifting to the cloud. So when you consider scalability factor, so I would actually say one of the platforms, this architecture that Prophase is into. So we are into the Kubernetes architecture. So that we've opted for Kubernetes architecture because of the scalability factor, because you can scale up to any extent where you can support any amount of workload. So that is actually necessary these days, because all the e-commerce, the front-facing applications are actually built on Kubernetes, because you might have a lot of data or a lot of traffic actually coming in, and you have to serve all of it without facing a downtime. So if you actually go for a modern architectures like Kubernetes, you can scale up and scale down according to the usage. So that is one main advantage of all these advanced technologies, that it's good actually to go through all these kind of new trends in the emerging field. Okay, so you must be wondering, so if cloud computing is so great, then why aren't everybody going for it? So one of the main reasons is that cloud is just like a black box. You don't actually get to know what is actually happening inside. What is inside that's not visible to anybody, outside. And also you have no control over what's happening inside. So even though they say that it's secure, it's a secure platform, the cloud provider must be very secure. They must be integrated. They have all the integrity and all that. But there might be system admins who can actually tamper your VMs and also violate your confidentiality and integrity. So that is not in our control. And also, they are subject to traditional data confidentiality, integrity, availability, and all the privacy issues. And other attacks, new attacks can actually happen. So that in that way, it can sound a little insecure compared to the traditional local server system, monolithic. Yes. So few of the common challenges that you face during cloud migration is lack of strategy. So as we already discussed, you need to have a proper strategy before you actually start. And then the budget, everything has to be laid in place before it's actually worked out. And also there's a problem of vendor lock-in. So if you're actually sticking with AWS or GCP, and you would want to shift to another cloud providers, so that there are a lot of dependencies that you already have, when you are sticking to a cloud provider. So that actually is known as vendor lock-in. So it's difficult to actually shift all of a sudden to another cloud provider. Okay, so coming into the data security, which is one main factor, and comparing the compliances. So one of the major obstacles when it comes to cloud migration is that in terms of data security and compliance. So as I already told, the cloud servers actually take responsibility for all this securing your infrastructure and all that, but it is the organization or the customer's self-responsibility to secure their own data and workloads, because that is not actually taken into consideration by the cloud service provider. So it's all in your kitty. And another thing is the organization responsibility to configure. So you have the cloud providers providing all the security measures, but it's your organization's responsibility to actually configure it so that all the services and applications have all the security levels in place. Then okay, so as you're shifting or you're migrating to the cloud, there are lot of sensitive data is actually getting exposed to the external world. So this process, this transition can actually be a security threat. So the data is getting exposed until and unless it's safe and landed on the cloud provider. So the process of shifting can actually expose the data to the external world, which is another major threat. Okay, so moving on to privacy issues, that added security risk with cloud migration is like the privacy issue. So it's massive because you have all the data from a lot of clients, and that's there on the cloud, which is so that can aid in massive data mining, which can result in a lot of breach and all that. So this is another major drawback of being on the cloud. And also you're actually increasing the attack surface. So entity outside the organization is actually now storing the data that you had previously stored inside the organization. So that kind of exposes your data, and your data can be either public or it should be very much secure. So that is actually exposed to the outside world. And also the attacker can now concentrate on the communication link that's actually between the cloud provider and the client. So the way, they might be communicating using application programming integrators. So that can be exploited. And final thing is like the cloud provider employees. So they can be fished to get some kind of data out of the cloud provider. So these are the major risks that's actually associated with cloud migration. So that's in short about what cloud is, and the issues that you have when you're shifting to cloud. So this is in short of a brief into the topic of today, and I would request Vaishak to take it ahead, so give you a deep dive into the security aspect so that you get a better picture. Yeah, thanks for your kind listening. I hope things are clear for you.
Hello, Mr. Visak, your voice is not audible.
He's not the co-host. So can somebody?
He rejoined. That's the reason.
He doesn't have the permission to unmute.
I had made him the co-host. I think he had rejoined.
Oh, he'll have to rejoin. Okay, fine.
No need of rejoining. I had made him a co-host.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm audible now.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Lashmi. So let me share my screen. Okay, my screen is visible. Yeah, my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible. You can do the slideshow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so thanks, Lakshmi, for the introduction into cloud computing, and then you came up with the cloud migration part, and you briefly covered the cloud security point of view, right? So I'm not boring you guys with a lot more explanation. So I will just complete what Lakshmi said. Just a brief detail into the security aspect we need to think when doing the cloud migration, right? So okay. So, of course, security is a prime aspect, even if it's an on-premise solution or a data center hosted solution or a cloud solution, right? So, security is always a key concern. So, I'm going to cover the different types of security. Everybody says the word cloud security or cyber security or whatever, right? But it's not just a one word. It got at various deep-rooted levels and different categories. And since most of the audience here are students, they want to go into security, right? So of course you will find that when you understand, you do some the reverse engineering, or you do some hacking kind of thing. Using Kali Linux or whatever tools you use, you understand that the security is still divided into different areas. One tool is for one kind of attack, other tool is for other kind of attack. So all these things are so different areas of cybersecurity exist. So I will cover those topic also here in this context, so that you will also get an idea on which area is my favorite area, right? Am I kind of an encryption guy, or am I kind of a vulnerability finder guy, whoever, right? So that's perspective, I will try to convey along with the cloud security part, right? So if you look at this diagram, this wheel, you can see that these are the main security concerns, anybody is having, even it's a corporate world or enterprise or an SMB, so all these are common for everybody, right? So I mean, the data loss is one of the thing, right? So the data means the core data you have. It can be a finance data, banking finance data, customer information, or it can be a credit card information. Yeah, exactly that. Or it can be the patient records. All these are pretty much valuable information. And also, it can be customer information also. I think you all guys know that the Domino's website got hacked. And even somebody put a web interface where you can type the mobile number and see what are pizza orders this guy made, what is his phone number. You can know all information. So data loss is a critical part, right? Then other thing is that I'm going the clockwise direction. So the next thing is the malicious insider. Of course, we always worried about the outside threat. Somebody outside is getting hacking the data and getting the stuff. But one of the latest studies shows that the malicious insiders in the organization can also be a threat, right? So that is also has to be taken care by the organizations, right? So, I remember a story where, somebody created a web banking application for some European countries. And in that banking application, what happens is that whenever a transaction is made, maybe something like $0.001 is sent to his account, right? So this is a malicious insider, but that is with respect to coding, right? The programming, right? So, I mean, they tracked down this guy by looking at the code and understood which team in which part of the world was developing that piece of code, and finally tracked down to that employee, right? So these kinds of insiders are always there. So this is also a great threat. Next thing is the insecure API part. Insecure API means, we know that there are websites and there are web applications, right? whatever you log in and you type something on it, you do some transactions, it's called as a web application. But these days, it's more of an API driven. So you have, for login, for use authentication, you have an API. For example, what this API does, you give the username and the password, it will return yes or no. The username and password is yes. So that is an API, right? So for instance, we work closely with one of the firms which does, the services for Uber, right? So the Uber got, around 900 APIs running inside. So, I can see you, for logging, there's an API. For finding the best driver, there's an API. For finding the best route, there's an API. For finding the best fare, there's an API. So it's all API driven, right? So whatever you say, there's an API. So this API is since the whole world is kind of an API driven world, exploiting this API has also become a great problem for the enterprises who's having a product. So that's one concern. Next is a shared responsibility. This is always a conflicting thing, right? So if you're hosting your application on a cloud or a typical hosting, if something bad happens, the hosting guys will say, oh, it's your responsibility, and the customer will say it's your responsibility. It's always there's a conflict. So that's one of the concern, right? Then the compliance. So as you guys know that a lot of complaints are happening, in the world, right? So the compliance means the way in which you handle the data, the way in which you take the data, whatever, right? So this compliance has been already enforced in many parts, like European region, in the US, and many other countries. They already have the compliance. But if you look at India, who is having tons of applications, tons of web applications, big companies running here, right? But the interesting thing is that we don't have a compliance. Right now it's going to happen. The government is passing a bill and a lot of complaints are coming in, and so we don't have a bill as of now, but the government says that okay, you cannot do this because WhatsApp was trying to do something and government said you cannot do that. Then Twitter is doing something and government said okay, you cannot do that. Then conflict is coming. Because why all this happened? Because we don't have a bill. So right now the government is doing that, so that kind of compliance part is also needed. Next thing is insufficient due diligence. It's a broad word. Like whatever things you do on the is there a process in place in your architecture, in your security architecture? Do you have step 1, 2, 3, 4 guidelines is there? So this kind of due diligence is pretty much needed. Then of course denial of service. So it's also a big term, right? So that means maybe you are aware of the denial of service attacks happening to the IRCTC. When you book for a Talkal, all of a sudden you try to book some tickets, you don't get it. So that's a denial of service. But it's not caused by anybody, it's caused by our servers only, right? So this too much of traffic is coming and the service is getting disrupted, right? So that's a denial of service. But the malicious people who make that intended denial of service attacks by sending too much packets, that's also a big threat, right? And of course, improper cloud management. I mean, who is handling the cloud? Who is doing these managerial activities? All these things can also cause the problem, right? So, yeah. So data loss and data breach. So data loss is kind of something gone bad. The backup gone. The hard disk failed. There is data loss. Data breach is the one I said initially. That is getting the content out of the picture. Yeah. So of course, the topic of discussion today is cloud migration, right? So of course, and the security on cloud migration. So of course, there's a lot of advantage of having the cloud compared to on-premise or the co-located data centers. So of course, the technical expertise, there should be this, you can that, right? So the government, we cannot have those kind of skilled people at different locations. But with the cloud, with the cloud on the sector, you can have a very specialized skill set people. The managed service will be better. So that's one advantage. And if you have something on the cloud on the data center, the upgrade is it's very less frequent update is happening. You can see that still people are using Windows 7, Windows XP, and all those computers are there, right? I mean, with respect to endpoint machines. So in cloud, the upgrade is always frequent because it's very easy to do the update because the centralized update mechanism is there. Then of course, physical DC security, the data center security, the physical security of the data center security. okay, it should be the same kind of thing, right? So it can be good or bad with respect to, one thing I can say that recently one big thing happened with HDFC. I think it's in Bangalore. The HDFC Bank, what happened? It's not a cyber attack. The power failed. I'm just wondering how this happened. So they of course have battery backups. They of course have generator backups. But what happened? But the power failed all of a sudden. Like I switch off this computer and go, right. So this kind of thing can happen with the government department or the location or DC data centers. So this is a problem. And IT infrastructure security is also one factor to consider. The vulnerability security patching is always more frequent and update with the cloud. Then the certification and compliances, right? It's properly maintained. So I think it's a government department in the sense, you just rephrase it as the conventional, the companies on data center. It's not government, I mean exactly. So it's just like the companies, and compared to the cloud, those people who are dedicated for managing is the cloud and the hosted solution, right? So the downtime, the downtime is the thing I was telling. So it can happen to a power failure, the fiber cable got cut, whatever it can cause these problems, right? So now I'm just coming back to recapturing what all things said. Specifically, I think Lakshmi covered few of the things randomly here and there. So I just want to make structure on it, right? So you can see that these are the different layers. The data layer is there, the application layer is there, the host layer is there, the network layer is there, the identity and access layer is there, and the physical layer is there. So the security should be placed. The security walkthrough should happen through all these layers. All these layers should be taken care of, right? In cloud security. So let me just quickly go through each of the layers. Like as I said in the beginning, data. So we should know. We should have a complete control over what data we process. I mean, what do we have? What is the sensitivity of that data, right? And who can access what kind of data? And who got the permission on that data. I mean, a lot of things are there. I mean, that is a data law we are going to pass by the government, right? So all the things needs to be clearly defined. That due diligence has to be happen in the data part. Now, the second part is, let me go back to the diagram always. So the data is there. Now the application, right? So application can be anything. The web interface, you are seeing we are using Cisco WebEx. This is an application, right? So this application has to be properly tested. The code analysis should be done properly, or else what can happen? Some intruder can come in and join in the meeting. And I mean, things happen with Zoom. Right, that. So there was vulnerability in the Zoom, and Zoom was overexposed during the lockdown period. Everybody was using Zoom, and what happened? They were not ready for that. So actually, this happened. Zoom story. I mean, the only company that got success. Many companies are there, but predominantly the company which got success in this pandemic was the Zoom. Everybody started using the Zoom and all. Right. So all of a sudden, what happened is that there was some vulnerability in the application. Some random people can come and enter into the application and do whatever vulgarities, right? So things like that happen. So automated testing has to be done for the application. The compliance always there. Whatever layer it is, the compliance has to be done. Threat investigation, you need to identify the threat. Is there any existing threats existing on the platform? It has to be mitigated and all those things. Then other thing is that the applications are correlated with the DevOps. So I think this DevOps is a pretty new terminology. We are hearing it for maybe for the last 3-4 years, right? So before that, it was called as system engineers and the programmers. There are two kinds of people: the programmers and the system engineers, right? So now the technology is moving into a different direction where it's called as DevOps. I think you can say I'm only a programmer. I'm not aware about the deployment and all those things. I cannot do that. You cannot say that, because if you say that, you don't have a job, right? And somebody is saying that I don't do programming, or I don't do kind of code management. I only do system kind of thing. That's also, there is no job for you, right? So it's DevOps. So you can look at this part also. This DevOps people directly interact with applications and the deployment, and that has to be secured. And of course, web application firewall. I mean, technologies like Profise is one of the key high-level product of Profise web application firewall, which secures the applications from hacking, right? So that kind of security has to be there. Then the host. The host means where the application is hosted. I mean, it's a computer, right? So whatever we say, the cloud, the serverless, the Dockers, the Kubernetes, at the end, it's a physical machine, right? So I'm in cloud. That doesn't mean that there is something software magic is happening. It's still on the computer, right? So it's an organized way of provisioning the computers is called as is the host always, right? So it can be a virtual machine also. I think you know that you guys might have playing with VMware, Xen and all, right? So you can create virtual machines. So this has to be secured. So whatever program which manages the virtual machines, the containers, serverless, the image used for deploying the applications, like in an AWS account, you can get an Ubuntu machine, you can get a Red Hat machine image. So this has to be secure, and it should have the proper, the kernel level, the Linux kernel level patches or the Windows updates if you're using a Windows machine. Now the network. So let me go back to the diagram once again. So you can see that data we covered, you know that, right? Whatever data is, and now the application. This data is being processed through the application, right? So that's where the application comes. Now, where this applications and data is hosted, this is on the host, right? So we covered the host, and now comes the network part. So network is very critical because that's where all the communication, all the external communication or the internal communication between different segments happening. So it has to be secured. So they call it virtual LAN. It's a networking terminology. So the VLANs should be properly segmentized. Then of course using things like side-to-side VPN. Let's say you have a deployment on AWS and you have a deployment on other AWS. I mean, why should and the only business use case is that you need to communicate between the AWS and the AWS, one AWS account and other AWS account. That means applications in one AWS account and the other AWS account. So you don't need to communicate via internet. Have a connection, have a VPN layer between the side-to-side VPN between two the senders. That's possible. This SDN, SDN is a completely software-defined network. Like you can hear terms like SD-WAN, things like that. So it's a completely software-defined networking architecture. That's a very interesting terminology to read because there's something called SD-WAN. You guys heard about WAN, WAN. That's a wide area network, right? So for if an architecture guy comes and makes a WAN network, a WAN network, he had to have the routers in between, he had to have switches in between, all things he had to make, a lot of algorithms has to make. But with the software-defined network, 75% of the needs can be automated using the software. The software can serve the purpose of switches and things like that. So that's a very different topic. Then monitoring of the traffic is always needed. Is there any bad thing is happening? What kind of packets you are receiving? All this has to be handled. The TLS, the transport layer security has to be there to have an encapsulation over the data to make sure that nothing is happening. And DDoS attacks is one of the big concerns on the network layer. So, if you ping a computer, you're sending a byte to that computer. If 10,000 people ping on the same computer, it's going to send a huge chunk of packets. So people are doing the distributed denial of service attack using, you never know, your phone might be an agent, right? So some malware installed in your phone can be a part of a bot network which can attack the entire network. So things like this exist. So network security is important. And okay. So we cover data, application, host, network, and the identity and access, right? So of course, very important thing, right? That multi-factor authentication, right? So you need to, you have to, let's say you log in using the username and password, and then say it's asking for OTP, right? So OTP is pretty much familiar. So it's called as multi-factor authentication, right? It need not be OTP. OTP is an easy way of having a two-level authentication. It can be a token, soft token, hard token, and concepts like that exist, right? So that's one thing. Then RBAC, that means role-based access control. So always you need to have, okay, this guy can access so and so permissions, and this guy can access so and so permissions. So in that structure, that's part of a due diligence also. That structure can make security pretty good. If somebody who doesn't have an administrative privilege can do something else, can cause more havoc. Now, IDaaS platform, SSO, single sign-on, a SAML, all these identity as a solution, as a service kind of platforms, that's also can be implemented. Then monitoring all these identity systems, like this guy, what all things this guy did, what all things that guy did. So this can give a very good idea on that. And of course, you need to have an access level periodic review. You should see, okay, who wants what access. This has to be properly maintained. And of course, the last but not the least one is the perimeter and physical security. The physical security means the place where the data is stored, the data center, the cloud. Even it's a data center, right? Even the cloud provider is also having a data center. So do you have a physical security from the natural calamities like fire, floods, and all, right? So that's good. And are they maintaining ensure correct backups? Are they maintaining that? So thing is that what happens if a disaster happens? Do they have a complete replica which can be spinned up in half an hour time, 1 hour time, right? So what happens if an equipment in the fails? So that's the advantage of the virtual machine hypervisors, right? So the advantage is that you have 10 machines in the cloud, and one machine shut down doesn't matter to the cloud, right? You can work with the 9 machines. So that's with respect to VM. But there are many other equipments in data centers, like like load balancers, the firewalls, different types of routers, switches. So do you have a backup for that? So that's the question we need to answer, right? So yeah, so covering different areas, data layer we covered, application, host, network, identity, and physical and perimeter security, right? Yeah. So finally, we are concluding. So what are things we need to take into consideration? So security at all layers, safeguard data while in rest and trans. Rest means, if you have data stored in the hard disk, use the data at rest. And if you have real-time transactions happening, the gaming platforms, all those real-time transit platforms, right? Then proper monitoring and auditing and access management, and you should be ready for the security event. One thing, I know that everybody is pretty hacker, security conscious guy, security superhero. Everybody talks about how we will block the attack, right? So, but there's something beyond that. What happens if an attack happens? You run away from the organization or what? No, it's not like that. If an attack happens, it can happen to anybody. If it's happening to Google, Facebook, whoever, it's happening everybody, right? So what happens if an attack is happened already? So do you have a disaster recovery for that, right? So that's also a big thing, right? If an attack happens, the server is down, the services are stopped, then can you recover it back soon? So that's an important part of the security aspect, right? So there is security event aspect. Then automation, right? Automation is a big keyword we see. I mean, automation is there everywhere, so it is there for security as well. So at Prophase, we do a lot of automation, right? So that's one of the big agenda we have. And of course, the cloud vendor lock-in. Lakshmi was telling briefly about it. So it's like, so that's the case of a hybrid cloud, so multi-cloud. So you have different multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. So you have different cloud providers and you have an on-premise solution. So, if we need to migrate data from one cloud to another cloud, somebody is saying, okay, we cannot do that way. Or we got a different way of doing it. They won't agree. So the conflict between two cloud vendors will come. So we need to avoid all these things, at the earliest to make sure that the policy is set in place. Yeah. So that's it from my side. So thanks for listening to me. Yeah.
Yes, I guess we are open to questions now. So whatever questions you have, you can actually go ahead and type in the chat.
Hi all, I think you can post your question on the chat window.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, please.
Yes, somebody has asked me, do we have assignments or quiz on this course? Yes, we do have. So that we post this session. You can take that.
Yeah, so somebody asked a question, what is the scope of cloud security in the IT field? So that's a big scope, big area, right? So previously, you're hearing about programmers getting jobs in Infosys, TCS and all, right? So now you can see that there's a big, if you look at our country, let's look at from 2000 to 2010 and from 2010 to 2020, right? So the 2000, that's a time where the big, the .NET revolution happened, right? Like internet is become famous, right? In 2000, the Google, the Yahoo of the world, Yahoo Mail, then all came in around that 2000 time, right? 2000 years. So then what happened is that the next 10 years for our country was like building of applications. We were building application, right? From 2000 to 2010 and maybe up to 2015, we are building new technologies, the banking products, the mobile recharging, the online shop. So we were doing a lot of building the application. So that's where a lot of need for the programmers and all those things existed. Now from 2015, I would say to now, we are maintaining the application. But that's the point where the security was also became a concern. So if you look at these time periods, you can see that the bandwidth, the accessibility of the internet, or everything has increased. So that enabled, the data to be accessible very fastly to the people, and also that enabled the hackers to become very serious, right? So they're also getting, very good access, right, to the data. So the thing is that the scope of the security, somebody who maintains architecture is very important. So that's where the scope of the IT is, cloud security in IT is very high. Next question was, could you elaborate on data localization? Yeah, so this is one of the compliance put forward by many of the countries, that if you are having a service in India, you should have the data center in India. Simple as that. So that data localization on that concept, right? So if you're hosting something on UK, you should have that in UK, right? And also, let's say you are a vendor. For instance, Profile is a company in India, right? So if you are going to serve somebody in UK, we need to have servers in UK. So that's what we have. So we need to be compliant with the data localization. So that's what all the government is advising the Facebook and Google and AWS and all those people to have. You need to have the data centers in India. So that's about data localization. And can we get the VAPT certificate from the cloud provider? Right. Yes, they do provide. So there are different certificate like SOC 2 compliance. It includes all these activities, right? So they will keep all these certifications. It's available to be downloaded from their website. If you go to AWS, you will get all those certificates. So they say clearly mentions it's a cloud responsibility. These are areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which will be covered in the cloud responsibility, that we have the certifications for all those things, right? PCI compliance and HIPAA compliance, along with the whatever VAPT certifications on different aspects, right? Yeah. How to know the cloud provider is secure enough? I mean, honestly, there is no way to know. Your Microsoft Windows is having thousands of vulnerabilities which is disclosed every day, right? So all the products have. I mean, you cannot 100% claim that it's 100% secure, right? I think that's a myth. 100% security is a myth. If somebody is saying, if a cloud provider is saying, we are 100% secure, please don't take that service provider. Go with somebody who is saying 90% secure. That should be the realistic one, right? Yeah. Okay, what's the qualification to become a cloud security engineer, right? So of course we have a lot of certifications available, right? Provided by the various cloud vendors like AWS, IBM, different certifications on different level, right? So before that, getting into cloud security engineering certification, you should understand, you should be self-driven with respect to security. You should try yourself in your computer, what all things you can do, what all things you can do in security aspect, and you should be, capable enough to do any kind of security research or security testing, and to patch those vulnerabilities, right? Then only you can go for a cloud security engineer, because it doesn't matter if you get any number of certifications. When you get into the interview, they do some practical things. Then you have to show yourself. That's where that the self-driven capability should be needed. So any specialization required, I covered that. What are certification cloud? It's just CSSP, or it's any specific certification on cloud governance. So I need to look at it, any specific certification on cloud governance. But there are a lot of certifications by a lot of vendors, AWS, IBM and all, and a lot of individual certifications also available. How can we do the basic knowledge for this cloud security? Is there any free trainings or courses? Yeah, tons of free trainings, courses available, YouTube videos, of course, you can learn, right? And there is a distribution called, everybody knows, that Kali Linux, where you have a lot of security tools you can try out. Okay, next is
and
if
also,
attack is...
just to add on to the security aspect, also there are a lot of compliances that are actually put in place globally. So all these cloud providers will have to comply to all that. So that is another aspect that everybody is actually looking for.
Absolutely, correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And
If attack is happens in cloud, how cloud provider can provide us answer to the customer? So they will release, they will say, okay, there's a vulnerability happened in our cloud. It affected only to a few sets of people. We have a patch release. So they will release press release all the time, right? So it's pretty normal. How to protect a cloud storage from malicious software storage from the user, right? So of course, if you are giving a service, how this happened on a first place. The question is how this data came into your storage, right? For instance, you are giving some, the storage services like, I forgot the name. Yeah. So like yeah, and the name is not coming. So there are a lot of cloud storage service providers out there, right? So you are giving that kind of a service where you upload a file by the customer onto your cloud storage, right? So you have many tools which can actually scan for the malware, like the tools which scans for the malicious files on your local computer. So there are different tools which are there to understand if there are any malware patterns exist or not, right? So all the major firewall vendors, all the major security vendors, the antivirus vendors, all have this kind of solutions. You can check it out. And how can we get into cloud security domain? I answered that. How to know that which website is not automatic and less dangerous for students and researchers because they used to do unknown universities websites and so on. Yeah, very good question. So I think it's always good to have an antivirus installed on your computer, which got the internet protection also. Like whenever you visit for example, ESET, I'm using myself. So ESET is having a check on the website, whether it's a malicious website you are visiting or not, right? So they can give you a decent kind of security on that.
And also you can check for the SSL certification. Yeah. So like only click on links that is like HTTPS and not go for HTTP alone. So I mean, recently, yeah.
Absolutely. So what does Profile build to enhance the cloud security? Yeah, so of course, Profile's niche is on the native cloud, the Kubernetes, right? So as you know that this discussion was mainly about the cloud, but the cloud has advanced to the Kubernetes part, the Dockerization part, the microservices part. So Profile's so the current conventional solutions resides on the typical cloud area, right? So not in the Kubernetes level. So Profile's product which works as a microservices which can secure the cloud native. You can have the cloud native solution. So Profiles is a cloud native solution. So that's where the main focus of our product. And number two is that I would like to say that typically all the security products works on the rules and signatures. Like if you have a rule, it will be blocked. If you have a signature, it will be blocked. Else it won't. But Profiles, concentrate 100% on the behavioral based detection and blocking. We understand the behavior of an application, and then if the behavior is malicious, we use some modern day technologies like big data, ML, and all to make sure that to understand the behavior and compare it with the hacker's behavior and block it. So that's what we do.
What are the available risk mitigation ways? So that's the next question.
Yeah, so that's what are the available risk mitigation ways, right? I mean, the question has to be specific. So risk on cyber security. You mean? I mean, is it like the web application security risk or the network security risk or a different layer of the hardware risk? Whatever. I mean, risk specific to which should be the correct question. So I think it's all those security solutions are for the risk mitigation on that particular segment. According to you, how many years in the cloud migration happens? In what year cloud computing will be in the IT market? Please justify. I think the cloud is will be there for the next. We are finding new technologies and new ways, right? So currently a lot of applications are on the on-premise, right? So people are pretty much reluctant to move to the new technologies, right? Year old, like 25-year-old organization or whatever age-long organization is already on the on-premise. I think we still have mainframe people using the mainframe stuff right out there. So it's very they're pretty much convenient on that and that. But when the time comes, when an attack happens, when there is something called the scalability issue happens, they feel that okay, since we had an on-premise solution, we couldn't scale, we couldn't. So when that disaster comes, they will learn. Definitely, they will move to the those people which are very adamant. Not everybody. Those people which are pretty much adamant.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, but because of the onset of the pandemic, now everybody is trying to like shift onto the cloud in a very in a rush basically. So because everybody is working from home and you need all the applications and everything to be accessed from anywhere, anytime. So that is another added on advantage of cloud computing. So I feel the future is it is a futuristic technology. I mean, no, not people. I mean, people cannot actually hold on to the local monolithic server anymore. So it's better to actually shift onto the cloud in the most strategic way that you can go.
Yeah, what are the economic advantages of the cloud model? Yeah, pretty much cost optimization it can happen because you don't need to maintain because it's a service. You pay for the service, not for the infrastructure, right? So directly it can have a very big impact on your cost saving, right? Okay, what is the cost and timeline for cloud migration? Depends on the application, right? It depends on the application which you're trying to migrate. Okay.
Adding to the cost factor, as I already explained, so it's just like the pay as you go model. So you only pay for the resources or the infrastructure that you're actually using for. Unlike the earlier days, like you had to actually maintain the whole hardware, everything. So had to be there in place, whether you're using it or not, or even if the workload, the scalability factor comes in, you might not be able to actually serve the bandwidth that's actually coming in. So in that way, cloud option is the most cost optimistic. So it's always good to actually go for the cloud when you're actually considering the cost factor.
Okay, cool. So, okay, do you provide internship in cloud security services for students who are interested? I think we give internship for the people in security product, right? So we have a security product. So basically we don't have the bandwidth to give internship for different cloud security parts, but we give the internship on the web application security, which is directly related to what Profile is doing, right? So that's a good option. So how flexible is CSP? By CSP, I think it's from Tamil Sir, and he means maybe content security policy, right? So I maybe what do you
Cloud
mean?
service provider?
Or cloud service provider. I mean, maybe yeah, correct. It may be the cloud service provider, right? So how flexible is this cloud service provider?
Are you trying to check the flexibility with respect to AWS, GCP, or different providers? Or so basically each provider have their own set of features. So inbuilt features that has been provided by each service provider. So
correct. For instance,
yeah.
For instance, Azure is more concentrated on the Microsoft Windows because they want to sell Windows, right? So AWS is more on the Linux platforms like that. So may I know what Profiles do or provide to the client. So Profiles is on a specific segment of the cybersecurity where we secure the web application. I shown the different layers of security, right? So we secure the application layer from hacking, right? So in real time blocking, detection and blocking. So we do have.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, so as you showed the different layers, so we are actually protecting mainly the layer 7 attacks. So whatever attacks come onto your web application, we actually defend against that. So what actually happens is earlier the traffic used to directly hit the web applications as such. But now if you have a web application firewall in place, so it'll actually pass through your web application and filter out all the traffic. So only the legitimate traffic is actually allowed to reach the web application. So all the malicious attacks are blocked then in there. So as nowadays everybody, all the hackers, attackers, they're all getting smart. They're using a lot of AI or ML algorithms to make new threat methodologies. So they're trying to attack in new ways. So we need a more intelligent firewall or a more advanced firewall that actually can block all these advanced attacks that are actually coming in. So that's what we have tried to actually bridge the gap in. So we are actually blocking all these AI attacks with the AI model, defense model that's actually kept in place in Prophase. So it's always good to explore all these areas, like be it artificial intelligence, machine learning, or Kubernetes as architecture. So all these topics or all of these areas are kind of trending. So it's always good to know. You can take courses on Udemy or any platform that's actually available. There are a lot of platforms, so it's actually open to anything that you want to learn.
Yeah. So next question is, do you provide training on blockchain as cloud security? No, we don't. Blockchain security is a different aspect we are doing internally. So, but not on the core blockchain. So we deal with the security of the blockchain-based applications, right? So the coin exchanges and all. So we do that. So do you provide internships in cloud security services for students as well as persons who are interested? Yes, I mean, we provide internship, as I said, with base mostly concentrating on the web application security. Okay, so yes, one question: where I can get blocking IPs for the where can I get blocking IPs for the firewall constantly? Right. So it's always it's a capability of your. Normally you can add the blacklist on your firewall, but it's always good to have. So there are many platforms where you can get the for example the maximum GeoIP. That's where you can get the blacklisted IP address and all, you can get the service. But it's better to have a solution which have inbuilt capability, right, for getting the latest bad actors, right? If attack is happening in cloud, how cloud provider can provide an answer to the customer, right? I mean, I think basically when you click, they can provide an answer, But when you sign up for the cloud provider, they will make sure that you click all the I accept. So if an attack happens, okay, I accept, right? So so there's no way for you to fire them, sue them. But the government these days are becoming stronger. If you look at the Europe, the UK, I mean, see that the Google was giving putting their applications on the Android phone as on the desktop, right? So that was filed to the court as a the competition commission, right? So they are killing other companies. So like that. I mean, for instance, so nobody can do that nowadays. It's very strict. The governments are strict. They have to answer many questions.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, I had already covered this. Basically, cloud actually provides a set of security features. So it's actually up to the customer to actually put everything into place, and they only provide the infrastructure security and security of your data and your workload. Everything is actually up to the customer. So cloud is playing safe on that. Cloud provider is actually trying to play safe. So that's where you will have to actually go for specialized security models to actually secure your data. So that's completely your responsibility.
Yeah, so if attack is happening in cloud, how cloud provider can provide? Okay, that's the answer. What type of challenges and how to take prevention during using cloud for research work? I think all these things we covered in that webinar will all you can refer. So all these things will cover the security aspect. Since we may not know the bare metal deployed at the CSP to our host or our app, how can we tackle the inherent vulnerabilities being exploited by the hackers like Pegasus, right? How can we apply for the? Okay, fine. So that's a very good question. So absolutely, the reality is that let's say you are hosting an application. I mean, there are different types of encryptions you can use internally. Of course, to decrypt, I need keys, right? The Pegasus cannot decrypt the keys, right? They can, they can get some privileges, but if you design your application in such a way that that kind of security for your data is done in a proper encrypted way, it's very hard for them to break. So what happened? The tools like Pegasus, what they did was, for instance, there's a vulnerability in the VoIP part of WhatsApp, right? So when you make a call to a WhatsApp call, actually you're sending packets, you're sending VoIP packets with a lot of data frames and all. So they injected a code inside that packet, and that code will automatically get access to it exploits the vulnerability in the WhatsApp and get access to your same privilege as that of WhatsApp. You can read camera, you can open cameras, you can read your SD card or whatever, right? You can do calls, you can send SMS. So all privileges of the WhatsApp has been there to the hacker, right? So they were like, so that kind of attack is different. They are not getting into getting into an encrypted data. They are getting into your application and exploiting the application vulnerability and getting that, right? So similarly, if the CSP is having an application which is vulnerable, I mean, there is no way for us. We are owned, right? I mean, it's worse than it's not worse compared to the on-premise data center. The cloud will have much more visibility and security, but still, if there's a 0-day is there in an application, if there's a 0-day in the MySQL authentication, right? So the tools like Pegasus Pegasus is just the name of the tool, right? All the people, thousands of people is having the 0 days in their hand right now. I mean, to get access to whatever service you have, it's not being published, right? So it doesn't matter. Pegasus is just a, it's a framework with a few of these tools. 0 days are there, right? So anybody can have it. This is always a cat and mouse game. You cannot win in security. It's always you win like Tom and Jerry, right? Nobody wins, right? So mostly Jerry wins, but so it's a cat and mouse game always, right? So yeah. How can we apply for internship? There is no option to the career skill. So we don't publicly, take internship or career. So maybe through email you can respond to us. Yeah. So I think that's it. Yeah, Dashmi, I think that's it. Maybe yeah.
Okay.
So
it was.
Yeah, please.
Okay, there's something else. Okay. In India, which industries have made substantial investment in cloud security, and which industries are yet to make sufficient investment?
I would say, the internet companies, like the travel tourism, all these people, the online payment, like all these people are made substantial investment in cloud security. But the industries like banking, they are still on premise. If you look at USA, the big banks like Bank of America and all those people are in cloud. But still our banks are in on premise, saying that on premise is a big thing, right? So I'm a cloud, evangelist. I think that's the way to go, right? So people are thinking that we are on premise. On premise means a high elevated security. No, it's just a myth. So these banking sectors and all those people are still on the cloud. Of course, they need to do a hybrid thing to start with. They have some, on-premise, and finally they should shift to cloud, right? It need not be public cloud. So the thing to be understand is that it's not saying that you have to go to public cloud, Google and AWS and deploy. You can have your private cloud. You have to migrate from the conventional, the data center, the monolithic architecture to the microservices architecture. That's the point. Not the public cloud, as I said. Even the public cloud is also good for scalability and to get safeguard from the DDoS attacks and all. Yes. So I think we can wind up, right? So one more question. Okay, so let me answer. Are there any open source based cloud where vendor lock is less prevalent? Yeah, you can use OpenShift. OpenShift is the Red Hat cloud platform, right? You can build your own cloud, open source cloud environment, not an issue. There are a lot of tools available, right? Yes. Yeah.
It's always good to explore, because only as and when you start exploring, you will get to know more about the architecture and the cloud. Everything only you get to know more when you actually experiment it. So it's a great platform. You should, all you guys should actually try and learn different technologies that are emerging these days, so that you have a better understanding and you are actually prepared for, preparing yourself for, any job that actually comes your way. Because if you don't have a particular goal, or you don't have a fixed mindset of what you're actually going to do, or what you're in, what is it that you have actually taken engineering for? So all these kind of things should actually be there, at the back of your mind, so that you have a good focus while you're actually completing your 4 years of engineering, and then you come out with flying colors and you try your best to actually, reach your goal. So that's perfectly needed, to have that vision or that mission inside your minds, because each and everybody of you have got that great potential. It's not that anybody is less than anybody else. Everybody is, equally talented, and be it in one way or the other. So you just have to explore yourself, and you just have to go out there, try everything out. Unless and until you give it a try, you'll never know, what you're actually good at. So I feel that a lot of entrepreneurs actually have to come out of the colleges. You should have your own ideas, solid ideas, because India is having a very good a lot of people. We've got brilliant folks within the country. You shouldn't just go looking out for opportunities rather than build the opportunities yourself. So that should be the drive that actually should be there within each and every one of you, and that we do great things within our country. And that's why actually Profess is there in India, and that we actually didn't prefer to go anywhere abroad and establish our headquarters there. So I feel that all of you guys should actually try out and come up with your own ideas, maybe startup ideas or whatever, because we've gone to events wherein we've actually judged many many startup ideas from various colleges across India. So that actually shows the capability and talent that people have in themselves. So it's not that we are out of ideas. So it's just because we have the fixed mindset. Okay, when you're out of college, you go hunting for a job, and then you go start working, and then you then just it's like a struggling stage, and you just move on. But it's always good to think out of the box and do something great yourself, so that we as a country evolve. And in India, if you say, a lot of talents are out there, but everybody is trying to migrate to US or everywhere, different parts of the world. But if we build companies ourselves, cyber security companies, or rather product companies, are very less in India within the country. But you have all the brilliant minds working in various cybersecurity organizations outside. So that kind of revolution you can actually create in India, because we are, 7 billion in numbers. So it's more, security is more relevant here, because India is one of the worst hit by all the cyber attacks. So I think it's a very high stage that we actually take security as a priority now, not just like a luxury. So that's the mindset that has to actually shift. So I feel that it will shift with young minds like you actually coming into play, into the picture, real picture. Yeah, so we had a good time interacting with you guys, rather virtually. And we are always looking out to interacting with all of you guys in person as well. So let's keep wishing that everything related to the pandemic comes to an end and we have a session soon personally. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for the patient listening and hope we've done justice to the topic.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, Mr. Vaisak. It was really very good, wonderful session and a very good feedback what the audience has given. We'll have more session in future from Profes. Okay. Thanks for the wonderful session.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot to SciSec mainly for organizing this for us. Yeah, thank you. We did really enjoy it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Request all the participants. I have posted the assessment link and the feedback too. Request you to kindly give the prompt feedback, and also the assessment link will be active on the same registration page. The link is shared in the chat window. Request all to kindly take the assessment and give your valuable feedback. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Lakshmi. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.